Okay, all right. Shalom. I'm Dr. Yasafa. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to go to episode 3. Okay, episode 3 of Being Black is a Crime. All right. So let me 1 second here. Hold on, y'all. Give me 1 second. Episode 3 of Being Black is a Crime. Let me pull the screen up, pull the article up, and then we can get right into it, all right? Okay, let me make sure that we're good. All right. Okay. Looks like we are okay. So just give me 1 second, let me check. All right. So, okay. All right, looks like we are live now. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, I'll do the screen share. We'll go to our article. Okay, so again, for those of you who may not know me, I am Dr. Yasafa, and this should be, we may have one more episode of this series of It's a Crime to Be Black, okay? Or Being Black is a Crime. And of course, if you don't know that, go ahead and watch the video that I did about Abraham Lincoln when he represented a Moor who was accused of being Black. And they accused him of being Black because they wanted to steal his property from him, okay? But you have to go through that, all right? So it's a crime to be Black. Take a look at the screen here. I would like for you to, for all Moors and all, especially those Moors who are Yasharala, I'd like for you to go and subscribe to this streaming course. This is an online streaming course available 24/7, okay? Go ahead, get this. This is part of Reclaiming Your Nationality. 101 Ancient Ibaryath. Ancient Ibaryath is the language that Moses and all of our ancestors spoke, okay, and wrote, okay? It was not biblical Hebrew, was not modern Hebrew, none of that stuff. It's ancient Ibaryath. And this course, the streaming online course that you can take wherever you are, whenever you want to, this is a comprehensive course. It is really a great, great value to you, and it's beyond anything that you've ever experienced. I can guarantee you that. But this is part of the return to the Most High. Again, I'm going to take you to Jeremiah 8:8 so you can see that for yourself, and then we'll get right into our topic, okay? So here we are, Jeremiah 8:8. We're going to look at the Amplified Bible version. Point here is I want you all to see just how important it is, or just how important it is for us to learn our language, okay? So we'll put this in context. So you see Dr. Yasafa is just not talking, okay? We're just not trying to sell you something, okay? The course is almost free. I mean, $1 for a 1-day trial, okay? You can take as many of the 113 video lessons that you want. And then after that, just $10 per month to subscribe. Cancel anytime, no contract, cancel anytime. But I know you're gonna keep it for years, okay? So take the step, don't sit on the fence, okay? Go ahead, just subscribe now. Okay, so Jeremiah 8:8 in the Amplified Bible, you see the highlight. It says, how can you say we are wise? Wise is what? Wisdom is the proper application of knowledge. Okay, so how can you say we are wise and the law of the Most High is with us? Pay attention here. Here's the point. And we are learned in its language. Well, what's the language? It's Ibaryath. It's not biblical Hebrew, and it's not modern Hebrew. It's not English. It's Ibaryath. Okay, so I'm presenting it to you in this streaming course. I'm urging you to subscribe. Okay, subscribe, do it. Okay, and we are learned in its language and what? And teaching. So what are the teachings? The teachings are the Most High's instructions, which is the law. Okay, so how can you say that, right? Notice what it continues to say. Behold, or the truth is that the lying pen of the scribes have made the law into a lie. Our ancestors wrote lies in the scriptures, okay? Very clear here, right? If you want, go back and read Jeremiah 8, verse 1, all the way to the end, okay? You'll have context. Our ancestors wrote lies. Okay, so the way to uncover those lies that are written into the law is through the language, through Ibaryath. Okay, so go subscribe now, subscribe for yourself and everybody in your family and all your friends, send everybody the link, okay, and tell them to subscribe. Okay, so then it continues to say, behold, the truth is that the lying pen of the scribes have made the law into a lie, a mere code of ceremonial observances. So what are ceremonial observances? That's religion, okay? Religion. What are the major religions? Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Clear? All right, clear. If you're into Islam, if you're into Christianity or any of these religions, you need to come out of them. Okay, regardless of if they rebranded as Hebrew Israelite religion and they tell you you're not involved in a religion. It's a religion, okay? These Hebrew Israelite groups, those are religions, regardless of what they say. They are religions. How do you know? Because they're teaching what religions teach. They only rebranded, right? They only rebranded and throw some modern Hebrew or biblical Hebrew words in there, and then they fooled you. All right, so now let's go to our article. Send me an email if you have any questions about that. All right, so again, this the course 101 Ancient Ibaryath. Go to zionlawschool.org. In the menu, click on course offerings, and you'll see this banner ad. Okay, this self-study course. All right, you can read through it. You'll see. I'm not going to go through it all. You'll see everything that's in the course, part 1, part 2, and part 3, all right? So go ahead, you see it's comprehensive. Go ahead and go through this, all right, on your own time. You'll know exactly what you are getting. So now let's get to our article. This again is the Christian Black Codes of 1724. So old, right? Such a long time ago. What does it have to do with you today or with us today? Everything, literally everything to do with us today. Oops, that's not the one I want to show. Let me stop this share. Give me 1 second, y'all. I got the wrong information here. So give me 1 second. I got to pull it up. Okay, sorry about that. Let me find the link. Be patient with me. Okay, so 1 second. All right. In 1 second, y'all. I gotta figure out what that link is. That what we were looking at is the actual Black Codes itself. Y'all might want to go back and read the actual Black Codes itself. Okay. And that'll do you a lot of good because the Black people are still being dealt with under the black codes, okay? So you cannot escape that if you are black, all right? You calling yourself black, you are agreeing to be inferior and property of the so-called whites, all right? And these days, you're the property of the US corporation. Okay, ownership was only transferred. Ownership of the so-called slaves, it was only transferred to the US corporation, okay, or the US, the U.S, United States, okay? So give me 1 second, I'm still trying to find this article. 1 second. Oh, wait a minute, I know what to do. I hid it from myself. Give me 1 second, y'all. I think I put the article in the link in the comment section. I think that's where the link for the article is, but I don't see my comment section. So y'all give me a minute, all right? I'm sorry about this. Give me 1 second. I'll find it in a second. Okay, let me try to pull it up now. Hey, y'all like the video. I mean, if you watch this video, you should like it because I mean, you're not giving me any money, right? You're helping yourself and you're helping your people. So, and if you don't like it, don't watch the video. Go someplace else, okay? Because, you know, I take it personally, right? People watch the video and they don't like it. You know, it's like you take, but you don't give. First of all, you're not hurting me, you're hurting yourself because you're going against the natural laws, right? You don't take or benefit and not give something back, okay? Even a piece of fruit has seeds, right? You eat the fruit, okay? And then the seeds come out, right? Whether you swallow it whole, the ones that you swallow whole or you spit them out, it goes into the ground, right? And another tree has an opportunity to grow. So, I mean, if you come here, like the video, share the link. What I mean, it's free, it's not costing you anything. You know what I mean? So, I mean, why not? Why not like the video and share it? It's the least people can do. You don't even have to agree because it's not my opinion. It's just a fact. These are the black codes. Wow, my links are not here. Anyway, let me, y'all give me a second. That's quite interesting. I don't know how that could possibly have happened, but oh shoot. One second. Let me find it. All right. Independent.org. Okay, give me 1 second, y'all. Independent.org. Oh, man, that's unbelievable. Give me 1 second, please. Just hold tight, please. Just give me a few more minutes. I don't know if the article is gone, so I'm trying to find it. Give me a few more minutes, please. Hmm. Well, I don't know. I don't know how this happened, but I can't find it. We're not going to be able to do it. Article's gone. Wow. The article is gone. How does that happen? Now, give me 1 second. Let me try a different way. Give me 1 second. All right, let's see if we can find it this way. Hmm. Oh, wow. Just a few minutes, everyone. I hope I can find it. Hmm. This is definitely kind of wild. Ah, shoot. Hmm. Oh, well. Hmm. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. All right. Wow. Hmm. Well, oh, this is the video I would like for you all to go back and watch, Being Black is a Crime. Okay. So watch this video, and that's episode 1. Oh, I forgot I'm not screen sharing. Never mind. I'll do it later. I'm not screen sharing. I forgot. Uh, so give me 1 second. Hopefully I can get it now. I had the link in the comment section of the video, but the link is no longer there. So let me try this way. All right, I got it. Wow. What a trip. What a trip. Anyway, here we are. This is the article. So let's go to where we stopped. I apologize for the delay, but the article was gone. Okay, nothing I can do about it. But let's continue with the lesson. It doesn't affect me. Okay, it doesn't affect me, doesn't frustrate me, has no effect on me whatsoever. I hope that you can hang with me through these technical issues that come up, because I don't have any control over it, y'all. Okay, so don't let it get you down. That's probably the point of it, to discourage you so you go somewhere else and not learn. Okay, but we're more mature than that, right? All right. And hopefully more responsible than to let some people or bots, I don't know how they do this, but to let anybody stop you. Okay, be unstoppable. Okay, so let's go to where we stopped last time so we can pick up. Okay, we stopped about a little bit better than halfway through. We were just about to get to some of the interesting stuff. Okay, so this article gave us background or introductory information into the Black codes. Okay, and we'll go into it further on Saturday. Okay, not this Saturday, but on Saturdays during our class. So these codes have to do with Deuteronomy chapter 28, the curses, right? Everyone should know that. Okay, so we did not do Bacon's rebellion. I think that's where we stopped. Let's see. So just remember, scholars, nobody wants you to know this information, because once you know this information and you are aware of who you are, right, then you can begin to protect yourself and to use the law to protect yourself. Okay, and not only to protect yourself when a highway man pulls you over, right, but in other areas of your life too. Financially speaking, okay, socially speaking, you can enforce the law, right? You are in process of becoming competent. Okay, competent in what? Competent in law, who you are. Okay, remember, mores are the law, right? But that's only one part of it. It's only one part of it. All right. Okay, so all right, so I think that's where we left off. Let me just make sure. Okay, so origins debate. No, we covered that. So we covered chattel slavery, right? Everybody should recall that chattel slavery refers back to Genesis chapter 1. That's the commission that the creature that was created in Genesis chapter 1 was given to do to us, right? Once they would put us in bondage, put us in what? The status of being an animal, an object. Okay. And then they would use law, legal process, okay, to do what? To harm us, right? Malicious legislation and malicious lawsuits, so on and so forth, okay? It's right there in our records, in our contract, that they would do this, all right? So no mystery. And guess what? You are still in bondage because you still have a job. And right, you're not, most of us are not working for ourselves, and we're not making our own rules as sovereigns. Okay, and I don't mean sovereign citizens. That's something completely different. That has nothing to do with us. I'm speaking in terms of the Constitution for the United States, all right? And also our law as put forth or given to us by the Most High through Moses. Okay, so hereditary bondage. Let's start here, okay? And we can work our way through this. It's really not much to go through here. So hereditary bondage, right? So in other words, you're born into servitude. All right, so here we go. Do me a favor, like the video and share it, okay? Like the video and share it. It helps a lot. Doesn't help me, it's helping you, because the more people who come to this information, the faster they can also have a chance to return to the Most High. We have to return not just as individuals, but as a nation, okay? So as a nation, so yes, you are responsible for your brother or your sister. You are, okay? Am I my brother's keeper? Yes, you are. Okay, hereditary bondage. There is much more in the way of specific content that shows in detail how the quote unquote white race was invented by the ruling elite that no single review can summarize, but there is one crucial piece related to family life that is instructive. Okay, so the white race was created by the ruling elite. All right, of course, it was created to benefit them and them mostly. Okay, so let's continue, and we can see how they use the common white people or the non-elite white people. Okay, and how the white race does that. We discussed that last class. So go back and watch that video if this is your first one. If this is your first episode. All right, so, but there is one crucial piece related to family life that is instructive. The imposition of lifetime hereditary bondage servitude on the African American who's now what, or in history was called Black and Negro. Do you see why it's important to let these brands go? Okay, you are Moors, you're Moors, and you're from the nation of Yasharallah, and some of you are not from the nation of Yasharallah, right? But there's 16 nations. Okay, so if you're Genesis chapter 2, that means you're non-hybrid, you're autochthonous. Okay, go back and watch the other videos. All right, this applies to you. Okay, African American, Negro, Black, colored, these have nothing to do with the human family. If you are choosing, well, if that's what you are answering to, if that's what you identify with, then this information is going to apply to you whether or not you like it. All right. So the imposition of lifetime hereditary bond servitude on the African American was dependent on the denial of English common law principle of partis sequitur patrum. The status of the child follows that of the father. The status of the child follows that of the father. Okay, so what is this saying? They're saying that they would no longer hold to that, right? So they get that from scripture, don't they? Our ancestors in scripture, nationality came with the father. Okay, whatever your father was, right? That's what the child is. They took that away. So now with the Blacks or the African Americans, it's whatever your mother is, that's what the child is. So if the mother is a slave, the child is going to be a slave. Okay, period. So in other words, if a slave master or a so-called white person has a baby or impregnates a woman who's a slave, then that child is going to be also a slave. All right, so let's continue. In 1656, Elizabeth Keyes, a bond laborer, daughter of the African-American bond laborer and a European American father. So is that European or more? Or is it a hybrid? Right? Or is it a, so you have to think, okay? Don't just assume they're talking about somebody who's classified as white today. All right. Okay, and the European American father to whom her mother was bound, successfully sued for her freedom dues by asserting the right under English common law. Okay, common law, natural law, right? Okay. Quote, unquote. The child of a woman slave begotten by a freeman ought to be free. All right. All right. Both of her parents had died, and her father's estate had passed through a number of overseers. Okay, so they did that to her, obviously, most likely why? To steal her property, right? This is the same thing that happened to Abraham Lincoln's client, who they began to spread rumor was Black, and he took them to court saying, no, I'm not Black, I'm a Moor. They wanted to steal his stuff, right? Okay, and they're stealing your stuff too. That's why they got you thinking that you're Black, all right, and African American or Hispanic and Latino or Indian and all of that. All right, those are bywords. Okay, so let's continue. Although her father's will left specific instructions for her release from bondage, now do y'all see that? How cold that father is? How cold he was, rather? He knew that his daughter had the right to be free, but he kept her in bondage. Was the situation so bad that he had her in bondage so that no one could steal her from him? Right? So he kept her as bondage, but he as a servant, but he let her live a normal life, right? We do know that that happened, right? Some of the so-called Indian tribes took in so-called slaves, or who were what? Really prisoners of war. Okay, and they were said to be slaves, but they were actually family members who they were keeping so that someone couldn't come and steal them and put them back into servitude. So what was happening here, right? We don't know, okay? So let's continue. Okay, so in the Northumberland County Court, the defense claimed that the status of the child, Elizabeth Key, should follow that of her mother, who was alleged to be that of a lifetime bond laborer. A jury of 12 men supported Key's claim for freedom and arrears for the time she had been held following English common law. Okay, so what are we seeing here? What can we get out of this? There are some people who will agree to enslaving you as long as you're identifying as Negro, Black, colored, African American. But once you know who you are and you let the world know, right? And you begin to what? Enforce your rights or enforce the Constitution, okay? They will then agree with you and say, oh, you should be free, right? That's what's happening here. All right. The Northumberland ruling was appealed to the Virginia General Court by the overseers of her father's estate. Now, of course, they wanted the money, right? And the woman to keep her as property. The exact ruling of the General Court was destroyed by fire in 1865. Well, isn't that convenient, right? But a transcript made in 1860, and so how can you know that that's true, right? And dated 12th March 1856, is believed by historians to refer to the General Court's acceptance of the defense's argument and overturning of the Northumberland County Court ruling. Okay, so the record was destroyed. I don't believe it. I don't believe it, right? They've destroyed. We've seen this game played in history before, right? Where they destroy records and then they go back and take somebody's property, all right? Or take someone as property. So we have to think as we read and not read and just accept things, okay? All right, let's continue. Only days later, a special commission of the assembly was chosen to make a determination of the matter and express the sense of, quote, the Portuguese of the present assembly, holding that Key was entitled to freedom dues, and compensation. For the first time, she had served longer than she ought to have done. All right. Okay, so don't think that you're going to be punished, right, if you claim your nationality and return to the Most High. Okay. There are some people who know it, but they're not telling you because you don't know it, right? Okay, so let's continue. One of the estate overseers appealed to Governor Berkeley, who ordered a suspension of further proceedings pending a rehearing by the General Court. Wow. There is no record of a further rehearing, but the Northumberland Court that had initially supported Key's suit disregarded Berkeley's instructions and ordered that Key be released immediately and compensated. Y'all see that? Okay. So right now you're in servitude. Whether you know it or not, you're in servitude under the Black codes. Okay. So your situation can be just like Key's. Okay. There are probably people who know this. And once you step up as ascending from the house of Yasharallah or one of the other Moorish nations, there's going to be some people who say, you know what, we support you. You're right. This is really who you are. Okay. And everybody knows it but you. All right. There is no record of further. Oh, we just read that. So let's continue. So follow the highlight. The attention and controversy indicated by the surviving records give us a sense of the importance of the case to both planters and laborers at the time. Planters would be the slave masters, right? The elites, okay? And the laborers would be the so-called slaves, the prisoners of war, okay? All right, so follow the highlights. 6 years later, the assembly in 1662 reversed itself and the ancient English common law by asserting that all children born in this country shall be held bond or free by the condition of their mother, by the condition of their mother. Isn't it interesting that there are a lot of so-called Hebrew Israelites who are saying that nationality flows through the mother, right? There's an argument about where does nationality flow from the mother or from the father. So here we see with the Christian Black codes, it's flowing from the mother now, okay? But in common law, it flows from the father, all right? Keep that in mind. The reversal of this longstanding law of patrilineal descent was not done for the sake of egalitarianism. The 1662 ruling of the assembly followed pragmatically as a matter of course from the proprietary interest of the owners of bond labor in securing control over those laborers and extending it to their offspring. So they did that to simplify matters, all right? So if a woman who's a prisoner of war, if she has a baby, no need to argue, that baby is also a lifetime servant, period. Okay, period. That's what they did. It's bad for business to follow natural law, okay? And they're doing that right now, aren't they? It's also bad for business today to follow natural law, right? So they have people, they have you into statutory, following statutes, codes, things like that. And unfortunately, we haven't known as a people, and so we've accepted it. or agreed to it, right? It is what it is, but now you know, okay? All right, let's continue. Follow the highlight. It removed a major legal obstacle to the later imposition of lifetime heredity, chattel bond servitude, Genesis chapter 1. In Allen's view, if the principles affirmed in the findings of the Northumberland County Jury and the special committee of the General Assembly had prevailed, the establishment of racial slavery would have been prevented. That's how important that was. All right, let me take a look at Genesis chapter 1 in case you all don't know what I'm talking about. When I keep saying Genesis chapter 1, so we go to Genesis chapter 1. Doesn't matter what version of the Bible you use. Go to somewhere around 26. All right. So Genesis 26. Then the Most High said, or I'm sorry, then the deity said, "Let us make mankind." That's a kind of man, in contradistinction from Genesis chapter 2. So this is saying, let us make mankind in our image and our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea, the birds in the sky, over the livestock. What is livestock? Livestock is chattel, cattle, sheep, right? Herds, okay? Excuse me. And all the wild animals, and over all creatures is a very broad term. That includes Genesis chapter 2, man. Genesis chapter 2, man. And over all creatures that move along the ground. Okay, so in Genesis chapter 1, this mankind was the last of creation. In Genesis chapter 2, the man was the first of the first creation. Okay, there's no creative days, and the woman was created last. Okay, so these are two different creation stories. Okay, so this kind of man here was told to have or to rule over. Now, when you go into the Ibaryath meaning, etymological meanings of these words, you're going to find out that it means to subjugate, right? Have power over, have supremacy over, white supremacy, right? But anyway, let's go back to the article. Now you know what I'm talking about. Let's continue. All right. The following year, the English government rechartered the Company of Royal, I can't see that, hold on, Adventures to Africa to challenge the Dutch monopoly over trade in human chattels. Okay. So here we see it playing out. Genesis chapter 1, this mankind is doing what it was created to do, to put us, Moors, Genesis chapter 2, in subjection, have domination over us or dominate us, okay? Got to get that through your heads, okay? That's the problem. Nobody wants to believe that this is happening, or that they could have such a cold, stony heart to do that. But it is what it is, right? It is what it is. All right, so the following year, the English government rechartered the Company of Royal Adventures to Africa to challenge the Dutch monopoly over the trade in human chattel. So they said, oh, we got to get in this business too. This challenge led to the Second Anglo-Dutch War, concluded with the Treaty of Breda, 1667, that gave the Anglo-American colonies direct access to African labor. No, it was not African labor, right? It was not African labor. It was what? Men and women, okay? Not African labor, men and women. So you have to wonder why they're using these soft terms, right? Why are they using these soft terms? To almost to make you not realize that you are dealing with human life, Genesis chapter 2. This is not economics, right? These are people's lives, okay? All right, but they're talking as though they're property. In 1672, the Royal Africa Company was given the monopoly to supply African labor to the Anglo-American colonies. African labor, okay? Why? Because they viewed them as animal chattel, right? Yeah, chattel. All right, so the reversal of English common law and the increase in the supply of chattel labor. So the reversal, in other words, they detached you from the protection of common law. Okay, that's what it's saying. Because what are mores? Mores are the substance and subject matter of the law. So they remove the substance. Okay, they remove the substance. All right. So the reversal of the English common law and the increase in supply of what? Moors, Moorish men and women to be put into bondage and concentration camps, okay? Not chattel labor. Let's call it for what it is. Where did they come from? It says from Africa. Which Africa? The Africa, or the Africa over on the other side of the ocean? Which one? All right. Or are they talking about both? Okay, so labor from Africa were crucial steps toward the imposition of lifetime hereditary chattel bond servitude, but merely increasing the numbers of lifetime bond servants did not establish the system of social control, and in fact, actually stroked the spirit of rebellion among the laboring population. Oh, okay. European and African. That should be obvious as to why. Okay, let's continue. In the latter part of the 17th century in Virginia, that spirit reached a peak during the Civil War phase of Bacon's Rebellion in 1676 and 77. Racial slavery in the Chesapeake Bay was not, according to Allen, an unthinkable decision, but rather it was the solution developed by the plantation Portuguese in the wake of Bacon's Rebellion in 1676. To the two overriding challenges faced by them in the 17th century. Let me rephrase that. Faced by them in 17th century Virginia since the establishment of the tobacco monoculture, namely labor shortage and social control. All right, so it looks like this is going to have to do with what? Working conditions and wages, right? Bad pay, okay, and bad working conditions. So let's go into it. Allen cites the numerous examples and forms of common resistance by the European and African-American proletarians as prima facie evidence that the white, quote, white race did not exist. The most significant and widespread example of this resistance was the second phase of Bacon's Rebellion in 1676, when an army composed of European American and African American bond servants, so these are indentured servants, right, and freedmen, drove the planter Portuguese from the mainland to the safety of ships offshore and burnt the capital city of Jamestown to the ground. Sir William Berkeley, the royal governor of the Virginia colony during Bacon's Rebellion, that very same governor who 20 years earlier had tried and failed to block Elizabeth Key from attaining her freedom, to overrule the finding of the special committee of the Assembly to stop the Northumberland County Court from following the decision of a jury, now gazed woefully on the shore from which he had been forced to flee by an army of Alicia Keys. Berkeley wrote in despair to a friend, "How miserable that man is, that governor, a people where 6 parts or 7 are poor, indebted, discontented, and armed. May we live to hear the plaintive cries of woe from the oligarchs of our own day. Bacon's rebellion was the turning point that brought home the necessity of social control to the planters, without which, as Allen notes, no profit may be derived. Okay, so here we see why they came up with this social control called the white race or white people, right? It was to divide and conquer, all right? So that the people who they were oppressing, regardless of what complexion their skin, wouldn't come together under a common cause, right? There could never be a common cause. So they removed that. Okay, they removed that so that this would not happen again. So that's the point of it, all right? So anybody who believes in this white superiority stuff and black inferiority stuff, what you're already, you already drank the Kool-Aid, right? And you're just a pawn on the table. All right, to be used by the elite to do their dirty work. Okay, so through the guile of the elite and their own faltering leadership, the rebels were eventually subdued and subjected to vicious reprisals. Charles II is reported to have reacted to news of Berkeley's vendetta by noting, "That old fool has hung more men in that naked country than I did for the murder of my father." Subsequent revolts only highlighted the instability of elite power in the face of labor unrest. Okay, so again, it's just about money, right? It's about money and securing what? The stability of their lifestyle, the elite's lifestyle. This is all this white supremacy stuff is about. Okay, their answer to the problem took shape early in the acts of reprisal taken against the rebels, which took the harshest form against the African American. Gradually, a body of laws and customs were drummed up to divide the European from the African through the gradual imposition of a series of privileges for the European bond servants and severe racial proscriptions on the African. So it appears that they're referring to the indigenous Americans when they say African, okay? Because there are many Europeans who came over and their skin is brown to dark brown, right? Many of them. Okay. All right, and what do we also know? We also know that a very small percentage of those men and women who were taken from Africa in the East over here to Africa in the far West, only a small, very small percentage of them actually came to North America, okay? So this African is really talking about we indigenous Americans, okay? That's who it's talking about. All right, codifying the quote unquote white race in law. All right. The planter Portuguese response over the course of the next 30 years accorded new status for European American bond labor, increasingly referred to as whites. A new term that does not appear in the Virginia statutes until 1691. Did y'all get that? Whites didn't appear in Virginia statutes until 1691, okay? And by the way, if you look in Black's Law Dictionary, you're gonna see that white is a status, okay? White is a status, it's not a racial group. All right, it's a political status, the same as blacks. is a political status, okay? Nascent white laborers were marked as favored through the degradation of the African American. I can remember when I was a child and I was learning this, I was beginning to see it because I could see what people were doing, and how it was affecting me, how I was being affected by this. And I'm sure all of us, we get to the age where we can actually see this, and we have experiences where we are treated as fourth and fifth class citizens, right? You learn this as you grow up, from personal experience and in the media. All right. In this way, combined by the force of laws. Okay, so again, here, what are we saying? We see that the social control, the desire to control the society, was put into law. However they try to do these things, they would write it into law. So when you read history, you also have to read law. The two go together, okay? You can't read one without reading the other. Otherwise, you can be fooled, okay? Because a historian can write things that are absolutely not supported by the legislation or the law during that period. So they can easily fool you, right? As another means of controlling your mind, although the author might know that what he's writing is a lie, okay? But he's writing it to control your perceptions, okay, and your activities. Okay, in this way, combined by the force of law and all the powers that accrue to the wealthy, a counterfeit of mobility was cast like a veil over the European American laborers, and a spike was driven through the incipient solidarity that had joined them in arms together with the African Americans during Bacon's Rebellion. It's a good example of this, union work. The union work is almost impossible. Union work, and when I was younger, it used to be like getting a city job, a good city job was like almost impossible. They were reserved for the hybrids, right? I don't know how it is now, but I imagine it's still the same way with the union jobs, right? Almost impossible to get those jobs. Only you're extremely lucky back in the day if you could get a union job, right? And then they give you the worst of the work, and and make it hard for you in terms of just working with them every day. All right, so that's an example of that. But there are other types of jobs that are difficult for us to get, right? That pay well. Okay, that's the so-called white privilege. Okay, so the white race was enshrined by statute in 1705 and 1723. Okay, so white race was enshrined by statute in 1705 and 1723. That's when it was put into the state statute, okay? All right, so it was not there before. English lawmakers charged with reviewing the laws and ruling on the colonial courts and assembly questioned why property-owning African Americans should be denied the right to vote and acquire property like other free persons. Well, I'll tell you why, because what did they do? They decided not to honor their foremothers and forefathers, and they began to be called what? Negroes, blacks, and colors. They wanted to mix in and be a part of their system. So according to the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, according to natural law, they gave up their rights, didn't they? They gave up their birthright, right? They gave it up. The governor of Virginia at this time, William Koch, responded and declared that the Virginia Assembly had decided to fix a perpetual brand upon freed Negroes and mulattoes. Y'all see that? to fix a perpetual brand upon free Negroes and mulattoes. Doesn't say Moors, these are Negroes and mulattoes. All right, now whether they knew that they were Moors or not, or they agreed to it, or they were born and they had no idea because they never had a parent who told them who they are. We don't see that, okay? But we see that it's a permanent, or not a permanent. Well, as long as you're in that status, it's permanent as long as you're in that status, right? It's a brand, not a nationality. Allen considers Couch's response to be an important example from the historical record that has been given scant notice by historians. An analysis of Couch's explanation, in Allen's view, quote unquote, gets to the heart of the motives of the Anglo-American continental plantis Portuguese in imposing not just a system of lifetime bond servitude only on persons of African descent, but a system of racial oppression by, quote, denying recognition of, refusing to acknowledge, legitimizing, so far as African Americans were concerned, normal social distinctions, characteristics of a capitalistic society. This was no unthinkable decision. So they did it on purpose, right? They imposed lifetime bondage, okay? And what? Harsh impression, cruel oppression, cruel racial oppression. So notice this is racial, right? Race is not a nationality. I hope everybody is seeing that these laws refer to people who don't have a nationality, all right? Chattel. Gooch also defended the law in 1723 on the grounds that bring to mind the case of Elizabeth Key, the mulatto offspring of an African-American mother and a European father. So this does not mean some hybrid, right? Or some white guy. Or it's a European. He could have been a Moor. Okay, this is very vague. Okay, of a European American father whose suit for freedom was upheld by a jury. Couch had prefixed his defense of the law by reference to an alleged revolt plot among African American bond laborers in 1722. Quote, open quote, wherein the free Negroes and mulattoes were much suspected to have been concerned, unquote. Gooch added that they, okay, so that's a typo. Gooch added that the law was passed to make the free Negroes sensible that a distinction ought to be made between their offspring and the descendants of Englishmen. So this was done, what? To the children. To the children, okay? That's the target, the children. So these are very, very cruel people, very cruel. They have no feeling or concern about us. I hope everybody can see this. All right. And trust me, a leopard doesn't change his stripes. Those descended from a white father or mother were, in his estimation, the worst of our imported servants and convicts. Okay. All right. So everybody sees how they categorize servants or slaves and convicts. That's how they see you. Chattel. Okay. But how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as chattel, a servant, a slave, a convict? How do you see yourself? What's your self-image? What kind of music do you listen to? That'll tell you. You prefer to listen to hip-hop music, okay? And the theme is always about criminal activity. Are you always watching criminal movies about crime and murder? Okay, that'll tell you what your self-image is, because if you didn't like those things, you would not watch them or listen to them, especially not regularly. The Act of 1723 also specifically denied, amongst a host of other things, the right of any Negro to defend himself or herself against any white person, or to bear witness against the attacker in a court of law. They do the same thing now, right? This is the same thing that they're doing right now, okay? Anytime you speak up for yourself or try to defend yourself, they're going to say what? You were being aggressive, right? You're this, you're that. And they try to scare you in advance. They try to put the fear into you in advance so that you will be afraid to stand up. And many of you are afraid to even declare your nationality and start learning about who you are. Many of you are afraid to even just start learning about this topic because you've been brainwashed. You are in the Negro state of mind. You're afraid to even do anything that people might perceive as you standing up for yourself because you've been conditioned that that's one of the worst things you can do. All right. And you know it's true. Allen points out that the denial of the right of self-defense to all African Americans, right? Don't you hear this when one of the Black people gets shot? Well, if he would have only complied, right? If he would have only complied, okay? There's nothing in the law that says you have to kiss somebody's butt, right? You're only supposed to what? Enforce the law, not harm anybody, okay? So you don't have to, let somebody punk you out, but you shouldn't be nasty, right? You should be polite, but you always, you don't have to, I mean, that stuff that they're doing is ridiculous, all right? But everybody, you see the point I'm trying to make, right? That's what they do. That's the sentiment of the so-called white people when they see this stuff on TV. Well, if he would have complied, it wouldn't have happened, right? But there's no law that says that you have to do any of this crazy stuff, okay? All right, it essentially legalized the rape of any African-American woman. Well, wait a minute, they're also raping men, okay? And this guy, he did all of this research. He had to know that they were also raping men. It essentially legalized the rape of any African-American woman, and let's throw in there man, by any European male, okay? Because we know that that was happening a lot. The American form of male supremacy develops in the peculiar form of white male supremacy from this point forward. Did y'all get that? It was this legislation that led to what? White male supremacy. Before that, it did not exist. All right, so these statutes capped over 2 generations of effort on the part of the planter Portuguese to extend chattel bond servitude to lifetime hereditary bond servitude. And now they had found the means to an end, one that divided European against African laborers and enlisted the former as captor and the enforcer of the supremacy over the latter. So in other words, all of this that we just read, they used that to get the common white people to go against all of the so-called Black people, right? How did they do it? By offering them some benefits, right? In the form of what? Some privileges and some money, all right? And then they turned on us, okay? So that's where this whole white supremacy thing comes from, y'all. You just read it. In churches and from the courthouses, the new laws were read out to drive home the message of the new racial order. Okay, so isn't this interesting? They use the churches. How about that, Christians? Right? So the Hebrew Israelites are teaching people, oh, they're tricking people with Christianity. No, they're not tricking people with Christianity. They're giving you Christianity for what it is. And you, my friend, who refuses to see Christianity as your oppressor's primary means of enslaving you, back then physically, now mentally, you are what? It was interesting. Today I heard a speaker, he identified himself as a Black man. He's a famous, well, in his lifetime, he was a famous psychologist. And according to him, he says that the Black people are demon possessed, right? And he has all of these reasons why they're demon possessed. And I'm going to check into this further. And particularly those who are in the churches are demon possessed. And it was, I was shocked listening to this. But I'm gonna do some research on it and find out. Maybe I'll do something with it, a video or something with it. But his point is, one of the things that he said is that the Black people, they go to church the most, they pray the most, they give all this money, but yet and still, it's their children who are most affected by what? Crime. It's them and their children who are most affected by drugs, right? It's them and their children who are the poorest. So why is it that Christianity and the deity of Christianity, right? The Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, why is it that all of these people are suffering the most, but they're the ones who are praying the most? Okay. And why do you see the behavior and attitude that they have, right? Why you see all these rappers walking around with all of this crazy stuff, crosses, and they come out of Christian churches, and singers, they had their start in Christian churches, and look at how they live. In churches and from the courthouse, the new laws were read out to drive home the message of the new racial order. Okay, racial order, not nationality. Okay. What had been the rights of Englishmen now became the privileges of whites. So in other words, whites are using and benefiting natural law, but those people who are calling themselves Black, Negro, colored, or that's what they believe they are, they get the system of white supremacy, right? The social control system, the Black codes. Okay, a counterfeit or social mobility was the privilege created by the imposition of racial slavery on the African American. Additionally to that counterfeit of social mobility was added the very clear-cut right of any white male to assume sexual relations, familiarity with any African American woman or man, right? Let's throw that in there. Racial oppression is merged with gender oppression. So here I disagree with this. Okay, it's all the same thing because they were raping men just as much. Okay, so here they're trying to get what? Trying to get the women, put a wedge between the women and the men with this feminist stuff. No. You Black women, African American women, they were raping men too. So there's nothing special about that. All right. So don't look at this as a reason why you need to team up with hybrid women or foreign women. Okay. So you do not have a common experience, as this is trying to make you think. No, you don't, because they were raping men also just as much. For the plantation elite, this right added rape as a form of exploitation that increased their wealth, and they exercised this form of exploitation with abandon. They did this also to men to break them psychologically, right? And to break the people, because quite often they would rape the man in front of everybody, right? Completely humiliate him, all right? And put fear in everybody else, okay? So we have that rapist of Monticello, author of the Declaration of Independence, still held today in classrooms across America as the apostle of American democracy. No, it was not democracy. It's a Republican form of government, It is not a democracy. Everybody see that? It is not a democracy. For the poor whites, this right further obscured the injustice and cruelty of the system that the white identity was established to defend. Okay. All right, so we're talking about poor whites, right? It was a right that planted the seed of hatred between men and women, deepened the divide between the poor white and the racially oppressed Black woman, man, and child. Why? Because with free labor, you're going to have what? Less jobs available for poor white people. Okay, so there's a hatred here, right? Both are oppressed. All right, both are oppressed. And these poor whites are looking at these slaves and saying, you got my job, right? I could be getting paid for what you're doing for free. A hatred that comes down to us in the strongest invective of American slang. Motherfucker. I don't know if this is true. I don't know where he got that. I don't know the etymology of this word. But anyway, the plantation elite the plantation elite prospered off the labor of the slaves, but the majority of the whites who did not own slaves did not. The poor white was made to hate the slave rather than the system of racial slavery that was responsible for his marginalization and impoverishment. So here we see in today's world, we see these so-called white people, the hybrids, they'll say, well, I never benefited from slavery. I met one here in Yucatan who says that that person said that they grew up poor, are poor, and they never owned slaves, right? But that's not the point, is it? According to this article, of course, they didn't benefit economically, but they participated and continued to participate in what? Oppressing and maintaining the system of white supremacy. So, but they never talk about that, right? Okay, so let's continue. But as Allen describes in detail, the effect of the invention of the white race secured the dominance of the plantation Portuguese, whose wealth and plantations grew in inverse proportion to the impoverishment of the free white laborer. So they're getting poorer, right? And the elite are getting richer. The counterfeit of mobility did not allow the poor white to rise up in social order, only to flee to the mountains to the west, to drive the Indians further inland, and then squat on unclaimed land, clear it, only to be displaced again by the land engrossing plantation Portuguese, who had taught them to hate the enslaved rather than the system of racial slavery that was responsible for their own marginalization and impoverishment. Okay, so what's happening here? They made these so-called white people, these hybrids, so poor that they didn't have any better option but to go steal land, put their lives at risk, and steal land from our ancestors that they're calling Indians, right? Steal their land and then squat on it until the rich plantation owners, the elite, could come in and do what? Put that land to use as plantation land, okay? In which case, that hybrid squatter had to find something else to do, okay? So their poverty continued because of the free labor of our ancestors. Okay, so the poor whites fled a system that had little place for them except as patrols. So we're talking about police, right? Highwaymen. The poor whites fled a system that had little place for them except as patrols and overseers over the enslaved, whom they had once fought side by side with as European Americans, not as whites, for a true freedom. Okay, so isn't this what we see today, right? How many private prisons have opened? Okay, increase in what? The number of police jobs. Why? Because there's no manufacturing hardly in the US. So what do? Put us in prison, and they put the hybrids in as prison guards and administrators. The same system of white supremacy. Okay, same system. So let's continue. They fled from a system they did not understand, but they carried with them the seeds of their own misfortune, the white identity. I hope some white people are listening to this, or some so-called white people are listening to this. You're only hurting yourself by buying in and participating in this white supremacy system, right? Okay, so you can see by what happened with Trump, and with what he did in his presidency and what Biden is doing. All of you hybrids, you put your trust in Trump and Biden and all of the politician corporate leaders, and look what they did to you now. Look where you're at now. You're being forced to take a medicine that's been you know what to people. Okay, that's what you get when you trust people who only care about themselves and money. All right, so you're responsible for it too. The transformation of the misery of the Berkeley to the golden age of the Chesapeake was achieved by the invention of the white race, which has come down to us as the ordeal of America. That's a quote, ordeal of America. All right. Okay, so Edmund Morgan's American Freedom, American Slavery, had done so much to challenge the natural racism. Okay, so y'all see that? Natural. Well, we've just read that it's not natural, right? This was social engineering. But anyway, I think this paragraph is leading into that. Okay, did so much to challenge natural racism of the psychocultural group, now dropped the ball. He claimed that the enslavement of the African left too free poor Europeans to matter. Okay, in other words, the population of poor people was so low that it really didn't matter, thereby leaving open the interpretation that enslavement of the African had benefited the white laborer. Okay, now that's common sense that's not right, right? Rejecting white skin privilege. Theodore W. Allen's The Invention of the White Race began as a spark of intuition that came to him in the charged ambiance of the civil rights struggle of the 1960s. The concluding paragraph from volume 2 points the reader to the author's motivating impulse. The present-day United States bears the indelible stamp of the African-American civil rights struggle of the 1960s and after, a seal that the white backlash has by no means been able to expunge the nation's consciousness. Perhaps in the impending renewal of the struggle of the common people and the Titans, the great safety valve of white skin privilege may finally come to be seen and rejected by labor class European Americans as the incubus that for 3 centuries has paralyzed their will in defense of their class interest vis-a-vis those of the ruling class. In other words, it's saying, y'all hybrids have been played. When you going to wake up and see that you are only hurting yourself? You've been played. Okay, so frankly speaking, 3 centuries of paralyzed will, 3 centuries of paralyzed will does not exactly inspire hope in the laboring class European Americans' prospects for a successful defense of their class interest. Okay, now they are not Americans for sure. Okay, they are not Americans. All right, the hybrids are not Americans. So let's get that right. Allen's reference here to labor history is sure to incite outraged responses that damn him as a reprobate and recite the list of past martyrs for the laborers' cause. But as Allen said at the beginning of his project in 1969, if it was solidarity forever, why must it be again? Well, that makes sense, right? The intent of his reference to paralyzed will in the concluding paragraph cited above is not to disparage the revolutionary potential that inheres in the European American sector of the proletariat, but only to free its putative leaders, the so-called conscious element, from their white identity. The issue at stake is not whether or not the European American worker can be radicalized, but whether the white radical can be. Okay, so they want to try to figure out how to get that out of them. Well, it's clear, right? Just take the privilege away. That's all you have to do. Okay. In other words, what's the natural law? You get out of a problem the same way you got into it, right? So you just do the opposite. Or in other words, stop doing what you did that created the problem in the first place. That's all that needs to be done. This is common sense. Okay. Allen's use of the term perhaps and may in the concluding paragraph admit the possibility for change, but it is a far cry from any predetermined optimism that the choice made will be the right one from the perspective of the proletarian society. The right choice is an informed, conscious one based on particular conditions, strategic and tactical considerations, all viewed in the light of history. In other words, undo what they did that created the problem in the first place, and that is a natural law. All right. Yet, regarding the impending renewal of the struggle between the common people and the titans, that's the elites, the plantation owners, right? There is no doubt in the author's view expressed here that this conflict is indeed irreprehensible, and that where there is repression, there is resistance. Nor is there any doubt expressed concerning the immediate and long-term interest of the European American proletarian in seeing and rejecting what he terms the great safety valve in white skin privileges. It's really not a safety valve at all, is it? All right. The revolutionary prospects for the European American proletarian then hinges, in the author's view, on the urgent necessity and willingness to see, for once seen, the white identity, which seems solid and timeless, a natural attribute, shows itself to be in the incubus that has paralyzed their will. Imagine what this, if a person can see this, if one of them can see it, imagine what that would do to their, the amount of cognitive dissonance that would cause them, and how long it would take them to come to terms and recover, right? But people don't usually act against their best interests unless they're forced to. While it has not been common for the privileged laborers of the oppressor race to have thrown off their privileges and their oppressor race identify and made common cause with the oppressed race, there has also not been such a well-supported case made for why it is in their interest to do so. And for this, we may be thankful to Theodore W. Allen for never giving up, even when he knew he would not live to see the day. So I agree with this. I agree with this paragraph right here. right? They've got to see how it's hurting them, right? And most people may not be inclined to do that much thinking, okay? People don't like change. You just have to force them to do it. Note, Theodore W. Allen's The Invention of the White Race, 2 volumes. The Invention of the White Race, Volume 1. Racial Oppression and Social Control and the Invention of the White Race, Volume 2. The Origin of Racial Oppression in Anglo-America has been recognized by increasing numbers of scholars and activists as a seminal work since it was first published by Verso Books in the 1990s. The second edition offers a number of entry points and is designed to attract a broader audience. It features an expanded index, internal study guide, a selected bibliography, and a biographical sketch of the author prepared by Jeffrey B. Barry, Allen's literary executor and author of the acclaimed Hubert Harrison, The Voice of Harlem Radicalism, 1883-1918, and editor of a Hubert Harrison Reader. So y'all go out and buy the book if you're interested, so that we're not freeloading. Okay, so that's the end of the article. So if you like what you heard, go out and buy this this 2-volume work, and also subscribe to our channel, zionlawschool.org, and of course, go get your subscription today for the 101 Ancient Ibaryath course. This is a streaming course. Okay, this is going to help you return to your heritage. Okay, that's your nationality, your language, your culture, everything else. Very comprehensive. There's a syllabus that'll tell you everything that's in here. So go do that. Like, share the video. I'm Dr. Yasafa. Thanks for spending time with me. I hope you learned something. And we're going to do 1 or 2 more videos on this topic. Okay. And eventually we're going to do, well, I'll keep it for myself, but we're going to have this available for you. So shalom.